I, like many people, was really blown away by Invincible Season 1. It was new, gritty, violent, and the story was very compelling. So when Season 2 came around, my expectations were quite high, but when it finally aired, it was pretty lackluster. The story grinded to a halt, and it felt more like filler than anything else. Omni Man's return was of course a highlight, but the show never reached the level of quality that Season 1 had established. And don't get me started on Adam Eve's solo episode.
Don't stick up for her! She's late for her own birthday!
No more speaking lines for you.
So while Invincible had been lacking, it never put me off to the point that I was willing to walk away from the show. That being said though, I really wanted Season 3 to bring back that excitement I used to have for Invincible. And so far it's pretty good, I guess. The first 3 episodes were a solid opening. The changing dynamic with the Guardians was interesting, and we finally got some progress with Omni Man's plotline. I think Season 3 is heading in a good direction so far, but it's not without its flaws. So let's get into Invincible and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the season's strong points. The moral issues have been great, and I've really enjoyed the challenges Mark has had to face as a superhero. His struggle to fit his black and white moral viewpoint into this complex world is at the core of the story of this season. I think the typical superhero plotline would usually reward a hero for sticking to their guns by keeping a pure and heroic philosophy. Invincible, on the other hand, really punishes Mark for failing to accept the complexities of life and showing him that things are often more gray than he'd like them to be. We see this with interactions with characters like Cecil, the Immortal, Titan, these gay criminals, and with Oliver. There is a lot of these great moments in the show that push Mark to face concepts he would rather ignore. This is the kind of thing Invincible has been pretty good at over the course of the show, so no points lost there. The action so far has had more hits than misses. The fight scene between Mark and the zombie soldiers was really well done. It showcased Mark's growing powers, as in Season 1 he struggled to destroy just a couple of them, but now he tears through these zombies as though they were paper mache. Also, the way Mark dismantles the soldiers heavily mirrors how Nolan killed the Guardians, which I think is a nice touch, though there are fights that seem to lack this artistic edge. In particular, the battle with the dragon seemed a little rushed in the editing room, but from what I hear, the general production of the season has been a little rocky, so it's pretty forgivable. Debbie and Oliver's relationship has also been a surprising highlight in Season 3. Child characters are prone to be pretty annoying a lot of the time, and while Oliver isn't the most interesting or best character in the show, his addition to the series has been a good one so far. The concept of having a superpowered child has been done before, but it's rare to see a series tackle the dangers of the situation. And it was very compelling to see Mark try to grapple with the possibility of his little brother becoming a monster like Omni Man. Debbie, as always, is a grounding character for the audience. And even though she is one of the few non-superpowered characters, she always commands a strong presence in the narrative. And while Season 2 was certainly slow and not my favorite, her going from being betrayed by her husband only to build herself back up as a single parent has certainly been one of the best in the TV series. This is all very compelling storytelling, and overall it's something that Invincible usually exceeds at. So now that we've kissed the show's ass, let's talk about the places Invincible has been lacking in lately. The show originally opened with killing off the world's main superhero team. This established some grittiness that made it stand apart from your average DC and Marvel stories. This told the audience that people will fucking die in this world, especially when facing down the more powerful characters. Yet this idea has been walked back a bit since the dramatic opening, as Invincible has become uncanny for big death fakeouts. We see Kate, Ray, and Rex all seemingly get killed in Season 2, yet none of them actually died, even though Ray was swallowed by a giant and Rex was shot in the fucking head. Alan also survived being beaten to death by Viltrumites, and even Angstrom Levy somehow made it through his encounter with Mark. Hell, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the Muller twins returned. My point being that it's been a while since we saw a character die permanently. Killing someone off this season would be more than warranted, even if it's just to re-establish some of the consequences for the main characters. And based on the fulfilling character development some people have been getting in this show, I think I know who's going to be on the chopping block. Then there is Mark and Eve's relationship, which has been, well, it's been happening. Like, it's not bad, I guess, but the chemistry feels off for the most part, and it seems like they may have fumbled the beginning of this romance. The pointless drama of Mark admitting to Eve that he had met an alternate version of her future self, just so their story could have a little drama, felt pretty weak. Especially when it all just gets resolved in the next episode.
So you're only asking me out now because the other me, who is not me, told you how miserable she was? That's not it. Did you have feelings for me before you met her? Eve, I mean, of course. Or are you only here because you feel sorry for me? Oh, God, no!
Fuck.
This has been one of the show's weak points before. Mark and Amber's relationship in Season 1 was filled with stupid and pointless drama that only served to alienate the romance from the audience. A similar problem could be seen with Robot and Monster Girl, which had a much more solid build-up, but ended up being the same outcome of needless arguing and bickering. Mark and Eve have had the same level of predictability. I mean, these characters ending up together was certainly not surprising. We knew it was going to happen since Season 1. But I thought it would come with a bit more grace. Starting their relationship with this rocky introduction makes it feel less natural. At the risk of sounding like a total dandy, I'll say that I like a romance that has a nice slow build-up that leads to a fulfilling climax. I mean character dynamic. And yeah, there was definitely a slow build-up to this relationship, but they kind of just dropped it on us at the end of Season 2. There really weren't many moments between Mark and Eve to make it feel smooth enough for them to jump to falling in love immediately in Season 3. The relationship as a plotline does make sense, but the execution was mishandled. It didn't end up grabbing me in the way that the writers wanted it to. On top of that, I think the struggles Mark and Eve are facing as a couple are really stupid when you start thinking about Eve's power set. I mean, these two want to move in together, but they don't have enough money to afford an apartment, so Eve comes up with the idea of becoming a private contractor for a supermax prison. But why is this an issue at all? Eve has shown the ability to turn any object into pure gold. How could moving into an apartment be difficult for a character who can not only make her own wealth, but who can also just build a home for herself?
Well, that's just lazy writing.
The Cecil and Mark battle was also something that bothered me in how it played out. Sure, the situation is somewhat justifiable. It is in character for Mark to freak out about seeing the reanimated soldiers and Darkwing working for Cecil. And it's also in character for Cecil to try to control Mark, but it all plays out way too quickly. Things go from 1 to 100 real fast without any build-up in the conversation. Mark is being demanding and is pissed off, but Cecil immediately resorting to an ambush felt a little forced. The dialogue doesn't really match the intensity of the scene. Cecil claims that Mark is scaring the shit out of him or whatever, yet Mark was hardly being intimidating.
I don't threaten. No, because you're scaring the out of me right now. I'm not even doing anything.
Mark wasn't seething with anger or threatening anyone. He just wanted to see the bad guys be put behind bars. So not having Cecil try harder to see things from Mark's perspective feels strange, especially since Cecil himself has been in Mark's shoes before. At no point did he try to explain how he came to terms with this consequentialist mentality. It felt like Cecil uncharacteristically jumped the gun here and resorted to using a weapon on Mark when he really didn't need to. I mean, this guy's the leader of the GDA. He's a really calculated person. So to see him make a huge mistake like attacking Mark without any real hope of success, while simultaneously losing half the Guardians, seems really out of character for Cecil. If the dialogue had done more to help the scene get out of hand, or if Mark had been more aggressive and threatening, then it would have been more believable. But here it seems like the plot is dictating the character's actions. The scene still works on some level, and it's not ruining the plot by any means, but it's worth pointing out where Invincible works and where it doesn't. But these are all fairly minor issues in the grand scheme of things. Overall, Season 3 so far has been a step in the right direction. The show is no longer treading water, and it's finally getting back on track with some real development. But the season isn't over yet, and we'll have to wait and see if they stick the landing in these last few episodes. It looks like Invincible is building to something big, and I really hope that there's a real payoff, especially since we have been waiting for something to happen for a while. Regardless of how it turns out, I'll be there to either sing its praises or ceaselessly complain about its faults. So, to follow in the footsteps of every other creator on YouTube, I will ask that you like this video and subscribe. It really goes a long way in helping me to make more content and to feed the bottomless void that is my ego.